Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Film Optics review brought to you by the Drive-In Podcast Network. I'm your host, Christian, and today we're going to be reviewing episode 5 of The Scholar of Season 2 of His Dark Materials. I kind of did that backwards, but that's okay because this is like my third time trying this anyway. But of course, I'm joined, as always, each and every week by Griffin from Film Speak. How are you doing today, man? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. I'm doing pretty great, man. Ready to talk about this episode. A lot of great stuff. And it just every time you put Ruth Wilson as Mrs. Coulter in a scene, which for this episode was like 85% of it, you're going to get greatness. So I was a lot of great character moments and stuff in here. So yeah, lot to talk about.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about, man. It's been crazy. And I actually watched you and Sean Chandler's little podcast earlier today.
Yeah.
You guys were talking about the whole Disney stuff. I'm like, I feel like all that has happened, but it feels like it happened like a month ago when it really just happened last week. But
yeah, right. It did. Well, so a lot of this stuff was like coming out, bit by bit.
Right.
Over the months. So, we have been getting pieces of it, but yeah, that was like last week. It was just like boom, all there. One
everything.
Giant dump.
I feel it. Yeah. All right. So anyways, before we begin today's review, we would like to thank HBO for allowing us to review this series. And of course, you can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Wow. Whew. Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Red Circle, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and of course, Amazon Music. And you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Film Optics. That is Optics with an X. And yeah, we're going to be, diving right into episode 5, The Scholar. So
yes.
What was your initial thoughts of this episode? I feel like we're almost done. We got, I think, 2 more episodes left. I think. So
yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I think we do have 2 more episodes left or something like that. It's really interesting because like I feel like there's a lot that's happened, but then I also feel like there's like not a lot that's happened. It sort of feels like we're reaching a halfway point and there's still like, another 5 episodes to go or something like that. But in reality, there's only 2. What I was telling you before we started recording is I really like this season a lot. And granted, I haven't read the books, so I don't know if this, is in line with the books or anything. But what I do miss about season 1 is that it was constantly moving and giving us great character moments and kind of ramping up the tension and giving us like a globe-trotting fantasy adventure. Like there was spectacle, action, stakes, suspense, character, all the stuff that you would want in a show. It was in a show like this, it was balancing all of it. And I feel like this season, while excellent in the character department, and there have been some really interesting and cool moments, philosophical and theological moments, I feel like, it's been, because it's basically taken place in one central location, I haven't gotten that sense of like, wow, just yet. Every episode has been really consistent, this one included, and this one definitely has probably some of Mrs. Coulter's best moments, again, sort of building upon what we got from last week. But on the whole, like I'm just kind of ready for us to get out of that little limbo city and like let's get the adventure going, which I'm assuming that's what'll happen in like the next 2 episodes, at least I hope. And I get it. This is like, it's the middle season in a 3-season like a 3-book sort of adventure, 3-season adventure. So I understand that it's not, going to be the most like there's still more story to tell and whatnot, but it does. I guess that's just like my only complaint is that I wish there was like, it was like moving a little bit more.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that front, because it does seem that we are in like the city of magpies, and jumping back and forth between there and Will's world is kind of like like you said with season 1, it hits the ground off running, and then in the middle it's kind of taking its time. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's this or even with like the Mandalorian. Like, I don't feel like we should be at the end of the Mandalorian already. And that happened with
Yeah.
oh my gosh, with The Boys season 2 with me as well. I just didn't feel like I was like, oh wow, like this doesn't feel like the finale.
Yeah.
Mandalorian coming up, it doesn't feel like the finale. It feels like it's kind of like with Game of Thrones, how usually what Game of Thrones would do is, the big episode would be episode 9, and then episode 10's the aftermath.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out what's going to be happening within supposedly these next 2 episodes. I forgot what episode 6 is called. I got the email for it earlier today, so I was gonna watch it, and then I was like, no. I got to face myself.
Yeah,
I gotta wait.
Yeah, I mean, after like dicking around for a couple of episodes, they now have both the tools that they need. Lyra and Will have the tools that they need to go find Jabari and sorry, not Jabari, Jopari. And it was it's just kind of funny because it was like, oh, we waited like all this time to finally get Andrew Scott, and like we get him for like half an episode, and now this episode he's gone. And it's like, oh, okay, what's happening? I thought we were building towards this character and stuff. And so I'm really hoping that we get that interaction between Will and Jopari next week, because that's what this whole season has been building towards.
Literally the entire season, yeah. And a little bit of Lord Asriel as well. I'm sure that James McAvoy will make an appearance, probably the season finale, because that's
maybe I don't know. I don't think Asriel's going to be in this season at all. And like, I'm okay with that. Like, that's fine. He's not needed, but I think like the everything that he did last season, we're still sort of like feeling the repercussions of it. So it's fine. But realistically, I think this season has belonged to Mrs. Coulter and Mary. Like those are the two characters who have really just like consistently turned in like the actors have consistently turned in excellent performances week to week, but the characters are the ones that are like, I'm the most interested and invested in their journeys right now. They're such interesting people, and the writers consistently give them the best moments. Except for I think it was last week or the week before where we got that nice scene with Lee, but like Will and Lyra, I like, and in this episode, it's nice to see Lyra again, like I was saying last week, kind of take on that mentor role and like help Will be able to use the knife and stuff like that. Like that to me, like it just is again strengthening that bond, which has been going on all season. But again, like, man, every time Mrs. Coulter had a scene and she was like talking with Boreal about like coming into coming into the world, it's just that's the stuff I'm most interested in.
Yeah, and like even with of course this episode, it's all about we have to get the alethiometer back. And then you have Will and I almost said Will and Daphne, excuse me, Will and Lyra trying to figure out, okay, so apparently, what the city of Magpies, I don't think that's like the correct term of the city. I think it's called something else in the books, but apparently, wherever they are, it's kind of like Will's world is covered, is like underneath almost. Because when Will's like cutting through the air, and they kind of see like the entrance of Boreal's house, and they're like, okay, like we have to position ourselves to where we can get the alethiometer and keep the knife, because now we understand how important the knife is, and we've seen it fall into the wrong hands the first time that they even encountered it. And now, Wells is the wielder of the knife, so he has to protect it as much as it needs to protect him. So I thought that was pretty interesting. It's just with that scene, because that's pretty much what the entire episode was building up to, was them getting the alethiometer back. And when Lyra finally, meets her mother again for like the first time since season 1, like right before, she was about to get cut from her demon. It's like all of this emotion just swelled up, and it's Lyra just goes crazy. Pen turns into like a honey badger, goes full Hufflepuff on them, and just it was insane. I almost lost it. But it's like Mrs. Coulter, like her own mom, she's like, "Oh, you're looking for this." She's like, "Take it."
Yeah.
But she's like, "But I don't want you hanging out with that boy anymore." Obviously talking about Will, because so clearly Mrs. Coulter, she knows something. She either knows what Lyra is or the prophecy that's going on, and obviously she is not for it whatsoever. But I'm sure we'll talk more about it, because that's not the only big scene she was in, because she seemed a bit bothered when she was when she first met Mary.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. What are your thoughts about that? With the whole, she sees that Mary is this accomplished woman in her own world, and I feel like she's pissed at herself, or she's pissed that she was either born a woman, or she wasn't given the same opportunities within her own world.
Yeah, I think what this episode does is it again sort of just further establishes that Mrs. Coulter isn't really the villain of this series, and the villain is like the misogynistic theocracy, or whatever you want to call it, that basically treated her the way that they did. And it's we get that scene with the Magisterium kind of dealing with the repercussions of the witches like blowing up their thing. And I think what's so great about that scene is that it shows that, one, nobody is safe by them, and then two, and then they have sort of like a little bit of a witch hunt going on in the inner circle and stuff like that, when they pull Father Graves out of the out of the meeting and whatnot. But it's also like they're, because of what's happening now, because of the witches revolting, and because of the fact that they're women revolting, powerful women revolting, it's like they're seeking to take down the anyone who dares speak out or go against the male power structure in place there. And so now it's like, if you don't agree with this way of life, then you're an enemy, and you're going to be executed and everything there. So it's just like, it's like the Magisterium, because they're on the ropes right now, and because they're afraid of the collapse of their system, are doubling down on their sort of sexist power structure and whatnot. And I think what's so great about that scene is when you pair it with everything that Mrs. Coulter is going through in this episode. She arrives to our world, and she sees people acting normally without demons, being free, I think, is the big thing. And I think Boreal even has an interesting line in there where he's like, well, they think they're free, but their governments are more corrupt than we are, where they're all about consumerism. They have a multitude of religions and stuff like that. And she's just like looking out, and she's just like completely ignoring him. And I think the ironic part about that is that Boreal has basically become as obsessed with consumerism as they have. He puts his basic bitch. He puts his basic bitch shoes on. He gets some coffee, and he like puts on his stereo, and it's just
that was a nice place, man.
Bro, yeah, but that's the interesting thing is like Mrs. Coulter calls him out on it. She's like, you have visited a world where they have answers to so many of the problems that plague us as a society, and instead you took it upon yourself to treasure hunt instead of helping for humanity. And she's like, this is why it just made her more mad, because it's like it further went against like everything that she's been. It was like her whole life she wasn't allowed to reach her full potential because she was a woman. And now she sees someone who has like gone into this world and like has everything at their fingertips, and she's like, and you're not even doing it right. And so it's like you really feel her frustration in this episode. And I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add before I get to the Mary stuff, but
Oh no, I thought that's actually that's a great point, because you see Mrs. Coulter just kind of, and it is true, like Boreal is he's a little sweet on Mrs. Coulter. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh,
He's
of
trying
course
to
he is. He wanted to build a life with her, and she's like, "You wouldn't be able to keep up." It's like she's tired of being the smartest person in the room and having to be held back,
And and for the longest time, it's like I never really necessarily considered Mrs. Coulter like the villain of the show, because obviously all of this is happening because of what Laura Asriel did.
Right,
like
right.
all of this is happening because of that, and he's kind of, and maybe we don't see him this season. He might be the Sauron of his Dark Materials season 2, where his presence is there, but he's nowhere to be seen because we don't know what he's doing.
Right, right.
But yeah, you made some really good points with Mrs. Coulter. I really feel like she's more of like an obstacle than a villain, because
but she's an obstacle for Lyra, because Lyra can't trust her, and untruthfully, we have no idea which she's a loose cannon. I mean, for as much sympathy and empathy as we have for her, and for as much as we want to like her because of how unfair the world has treated her, our attachment is with Lyra and her journey. And it's like, is Mrs. Coulter going to get in the way of that to, achieve her own personal goals instead of doing what's right for everyone? And so I don't know. It is one of those things where it's like, I want to trust her with everything inside of me, but we just can't. Like Lyra, we have to err on the side of caution.
Yeah. Lyra was not happy.
No, for sure. Yeah.
God, it was insane. I felt like the same emotion that she was feeling. It's just it's just like literally the last person. I'm pretty sure she rather run into her father than her mother at this point.
Probably, but she said a really interesting thing at the end of this episode that I loved. And she was like, I hope I'm not like either of my parents. And it's like, she sees Lord Asriel for the self-absorbed, self-righteous person that he is. And like, she sees Mrs. Coulter for this like really wicked, evil person, but who has like a sweetness and genuine nature to her. And like, Mrs. Coulter is like, it's like, admit it, you're more like me than you care to realize. And like, by her saying that to Lyra in that confrontation, we see Lyra literally go full Mrs. Coulter, like when she was reprimanding her in season 1, and we just see her ruthlessly attacking her demon. And I think the interesting thing about that, though, was that while Pan went after the monkey and like was basically had her down and theoretically should have Mrs. Coulter down in pain and screaming and whatnot, Mrs. Coulter was standing up. And I think it just shows that she is further, separating herself from her demon. She is her own person. You know
what she did mention, right before she went to go, and we'll get into the Mary segment here in a second. But when Mrs. Coulter goes to visit Mary, and Boreal, she's walking downstairs, she changed into her modern clothes or what have you. Yeah. And Boreal said, where's your demon? And she mentioned something about the not the fairies, the witches.
The witches, yeah. I mean, it
was like a one-off line.
Yeah.
But like obviously we didn't get anything more than that. So I'm like, who are you? Like, okay, like I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't say that she is necessarily a witch. I mean, it may have hinted at that, but I think she has some kind of discovered the ability, the connection or the ability to separate herself from her demon. I think what's interesting about it is that she, it comes down to, what is it, like willpower and like, becoming more independent and more confident in yourself and being your own person, I think. And you can see that there's sort of like a conflict inside of her, because while she is separating herself from her demon, and we can see like how somewhat painful it can be for her, she's managed to learn how to do that through willpower and whatnot, we see that the demon isn't ready for that. And so there's like a part inside of her that is still like holding on to that thing instead of fully embracing the person, instead of fully embracing, Marissa Coulter, who is what she is. And so I don't know, I think that's sort of like an interesting thing that they were kind of tackling on there. And then going on over to Mary, when she meets Mary, and then seeing how like a woman who is like equally as intelligent as she is, and in like, more accomplished, and is like writing an academic paper and on the brink of a world discovery that would change everything that people knows. It's like she sees where she is and what she's done with her life, and then she just has this moment where she's like, that could have been me. The power structure in my world did not allow for that. And so she just resents that. And I feel like between that and her confrontation with Lee in the prison cell, we're getting these moments where like Mrs. Coulter is just like, she's getting more and more fed up with with how she was brought up, with, the world that she was forced to live in, and the wasted potential. And so I think ultimately, I think with her arc, we're going to see her try and, reclaim that, and like become, the author of her own story, and be able to, be as accomplished as her male colleagues,
Yeah, like you said, I do not blame Mrs. Coulter whatsoever for being pissed, because it's now that she knows that there are multiple worlds, and it's kind of like, what might be going through her mind is, what if I were to have stumbled across one of these other worlds? Because clearly there are, gateways that are open. And Mrs. Coulter has said to Boreal in this episode, how are you sure that you're the only one from our world that's here? Essentially, I'm just kind of paraphrasing, but she's
right.
Like, how do you know there isn't others? Because there could be others hiding among them that, have probably thought the same thing. It's like, hey, this world is better than my own. I'm just gonna build a second life here. And even with Will's father, he's jumped from world to world, and now he's a magical shaman. So he's definitely fit a lot of different hats on his head as well. So that's interesting. But with Mary, she's, she finally meets Mrs. Coulter, was Lyra's mother, and Mrs. Coulter kind of just books it out of there when, Mary's just being Mary. She's being nice, she's being polite, and then she speaks to the angel dust again, and she's like, oh, you have to go on a journey, like your time here has ended, it's time for you to go through the portal. And I think the dust had said, we will not speak again in this world. And like, she's in the city of the specters, which I'm very interested to see how that's going to play into everything, because we've seen them
right
from time to time, and we saw the one kid who had the knife prior with before Will, he gets taken by the specters, and as soon as he drops the knife, because that's the only thing that was protecting him, and that's how he grew so old.
Right.
And then we get Leona Mormont, I forgot her name, that's why I'm just gonna keep calling her that.
Yeah,
she had a nice scene. She
did have a good scene. Like, that was sort of nice.
But then she kind of just runs away. So
they're definitely building towards a conflict between those kids and like Lyra and Will. I'm like less interested in that, because I just feel like that's sort of like a hindrance on the plot. But I will be interested to see sort of like what happens with them when it eventually gets to a confrontation and whatnot. But until we get there, I'm just sort of like whatever with that. But it is interesting how Mrs. Coulter sort of like stumbled onto something towards the end of the episode when Boreal was talking about the specters and how they only attack adults, and like children are the ones who are able to
protected,
get away
essentially.
free. And she's like, no, there's a way. And she's like scheming and everything. And she, you saw her get close to him and it's like, okay, here we go. Here we go.
She's always scheming, man. She's always scheming. Always. And by the way, really quick, a little bit of a side note. My mom actually just texted me and she's like, oh, I'm going to start watching His Dark Material. So I guess she's starting season 1. I don't know if she's going to like it or not because I was very skeptical. I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm like, you're not a big, fantasy person. So we'll see what happens. But I'm just happy, we might have another fan arising pretty soon. But
yeah.
Mom, so yeah.
There you go.
Sorry about that little segue. Now back from our sponsors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just very interested to see where this is going. Episode 6 is out there for us. Apparently, actually, through the BBC network, they got okay. I'm pretty sure they are a week ahead of us.
Yeah, they are a week ahead of us. Yeah,
and they debuted on Sundays.
Yeah,
I'm like, ah.
I know they're gonna spoil everything for us when it gets to.
I haven't ran into anything yet.
Yeah,
I'm watching episode 6 as soon as we're done here.
Well, there you have it.
Will not be spoiled.
He's like, I will have this watched in time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm trying to think. So with Mary, I'm very interested. I really want to know what her role is to play in all of this because between her and Mrs. Coulter, they probably are my favorites of the season. I mean, obviously, yeah, like you said, we have Will and we have Lyra. Like they are, great in their own respect. Don't get me wrong, but it's just when you see, Mrs. Coulter, she is evolved in such a way that I think she's even more interested than Cersei Lannister at this point, to be completely honest. Like, I love Cersei Lannister.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Coulter, it's just a different beast. But obviously, Cersei, she could be argued pegged as the actual villain because she kind of was. But with Mrs. Coulter, it's, you see the similarity. Obviously, both of those characters care for their children, but it's like a different type of way between Lyra and Mrs. Coulter. I really don't know what it is. Talk about your family drama.
Yeah, for real.
We haven't seen this much family drama since Skywalkers, so it is what, it is what it is. The Skywalkers are, but yeah, I'm very interested to see where what role Mary has in helping Lyra. And I want to know where the heck Lee Scoresby is. Well, no, they're coming through the portal. So maybe everyone is, I'm assuming, wherever the City of Magpies, I think everyone's going to be, meeting there because we also have the witches that are, coming to rescue or find Lyra as well. So the hunt is on.
The hunt is on, man, and we've only got 2 episodes left of this season, so it's going to be exciting stuff. And then who knows? Maybe we get another 2 seasons of this show. Maybe it's just another season, but they gotta. I'm really looking forward to when they break down that 3rd book and things start to get crazy. But listen. Yeah, the Amber Spyglass. Listen, I think this might be my favorite episode of the season thus far. I absolutely loved it, and from a performance and just from a character standpoint, it's excellent. It's excellent.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And yeah, like I said last week, I was like, I was definitely getting ahead of myself because I was blending in episode 4 and 5 together because I mean they're pretty much a part 1 and part 2 of obviously like a greater story. But yeah, it's all about the knife, but see, we also don't know what Boreal wants to do with the knife. That's the other thing. That
I feel like he just wants it for selfish purposes. Like he doesn't.
Collecting?
Yeah, I mean it's for collecting and power and such. It just he doesn't seem like he has a dog in the fight. He seems kind of he just doesn't. Whatever's going to service him is going to be the best option. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
spoken like a true Slytherin. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, was there anything else you wanted to touch on that you think we might have easily looked over before we wrap up here?
No, that's it. Yeah, it was a really solid episode. Excellent
was.
stuff. I'm just loving every week we get to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm really liking these week to week for TV show reviews, because like I said, this is my first time trying it out. And I really enjoy this. It's something to look forward to, and there's a lot of great TV shows out there. But yeah, between this and Mandalorian, we ending pretty soon. I don't know what else is out there.
WandaVision's on the horizon.
Oh, that's right. Can't forget about WandaVision.
There we go.
I can't believe it's coming out, to be honest. It seems like a dream, because we've been waiting for this for a while, and everyone's like, okay, well, yeah, we have the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But where's everything else? And then Disney Investors Day happened. They're like, here's everything else. And they just dumped a bunch of crap on us. And I don't know what to do with all of it. But yeah, so that pretty much concludes today's review. Thank you all for listening. And don't forget to like and subscribe to us on the podcast platform of your choosing. And make sure to check out the other podcast shows on the from the Drive-In Podcast Network over on the Music City Drive-In website at musiccitydrivein.com. The link will be in the description. And of course, Scriven, let everyone know what's coming up on your channel, what new projects you're working on, what videos people should be checking out over on your channel.
Yeah, I got some more video essays coming your way and everything. I should have a really extensive deep dive on Tenet coming towards the beginning of January. And a couple of special Christmas themed videos, one that has to do with James Bond and one that has to do with my top 5 favorite Christmas movies. So keep an eye out over on the Film Speak channel for all that stuff. And if you want to, and I'm dropping my interview with John Hamm tomorrow, so that'll be fun. Nice. So lots of cool stuff coming out on there. So if you want to stay up to date with everything I'm doing, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller.
Okay, so these Christmas movies, are they actually Christmas themed, or are these movies that you personally like to watch during the Christmas time? Because I know there's 2 different avenues that people take. I'm more of the, I watch certain movies during Christmas time, like Lord of the Rings, even though it has nothing to do with Christmas.
Right. No, they are actual Christmas movies. Like my top 5 favorite.
So not
Christmas
Die Hard.
Movies. Not Die Hard. Well, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. No. I'll push back on that. I think Die Hard is a Christmas movie, but I also think that it's not on my top 5, but it is like I do enjoy. I find myself only wanting to watch it around this time of year. So
I've actually never seen it.
Oh, it's great, dude. Oh, it's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, I bought the Blu-ray. I just haven't popped it in yet.
There you go.
But yeah, all right, everybody. We will see you guys next week. Only 2 episodes left, so we'll see you then.
See ya.